Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by JP. JP, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Appreciate your having me on.
Yeah, you bet. I'm excited for this conversation. There's a lot of really good material. And JP, you have one of the coolest backgrounds I've ever heard of. We were talking beforehand, you have a much cooler career than I do. I'm super jealous. Before we dive into the subject, do you mind sharing a little bit about your background? How you got into marketing, what you love about marketing and content. Love to kind of set the stage for the episode.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm old. So when you're old, you get to have many experiences. And so, I started my career in retail. I had been, I think many high schoolers who grew up in an urban environment. I grew up in New York. You end up working, hawking clothes at some point. So it was a natural progression after I went to college and decided that I really wanted to focus on doing marketing to end up at the Gap. I ended up at the headquarters of the Gap in San Francisco and learned really the foundational elements for not only marketing, but for business there. I was really fortunate to be in a program where we rotated around a bunch of different departments for the first year, which I think is an awesome way to commence your work life as a 21-year-old. Just get a sense for everything. And so I went from that and doing almost every aspect of marketing and communications you can think of to tech. Funny story, a recruiter called my friend who was sitting next to me when I worked at Old Navy in the marketing department, told her about a job at Nokia, and she didn't want it. She was like, I think you might want this. And sure enough, I did. And so I went to Nokia when everybody in the world had a Nokia phone in their pocket.
I had the Nokia brick. I love that phone. High score on Snake and everything. I love that phone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Bonus points if you can still hum the ringtone.
Oh, man, I feel so bad. I can't do that. That is a great question.
All right. You can edit it back in after you remember it. But
I'm going to be on YouTube after this for sure, because I know it's going to be right there.
But anyway, so I was at Nokia for a while, helped launch a sub brand there, which was awesome, and really started my content marketing journey there. It wasn't called content marketing. It wasn't called influencer marketing. But one of the things we did was we actually flew like bloggers out to Finland to tour our warehouses and our production facilities to see how the phones were made, and, got amazing earned media. This is back in the early 2000s. So that was cool. From Nokia, I went to a super cool job and entity, the NBA, ended up running social media at the NBA, which was a real thrill to be at a place that just pumps out world-class content, because it has world-class athletes, but also it has world-class producers and, videographers and writers. And so it was awesome to be working there at that time specifically, where, the stars were immense. It was cool also to have that level of content because you can experiment all the time. And so I had a great time working at the NBA. I'm a huge basketball fan. And then from there, I went to Viacom. I went and I ran the social media group and part of the digital team at BET, which is focused on the African-American audience here in the States. And that was super cool because, Black Twitter was and is a thing. And so to work at a company that was serving an audience that was always at the tip of the spear was amazing from a content perspective. So after having worked at all these really big, cool multinational places, I decided to try my hand at a startup. I'd been a DJ for 30 years and I wanted to do something music related. And 99.3% of startups, it didn't work. But it was a fun experience nonetheless for a year. From all of those places, I went to the biggest place of all from an employee-based perspective. I went to IBM And that stayed there for about 4 years and helped run the content marketing group. So all over the place from an industry perspective, but I love tech and I love being at a place that is yearning to be innovative. And that's what brought me to my current position at a company called Lightcast. We are, or they are, a data company rooted in talking about the labor market. And I never really was, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, like, hey, you doing something with labor? I'm like, never. But it's cool because I went to Penn undergrad, Wharton specifically. And so all the way back, in the late 90s, I was talking about economics and talking about and learning about economists. And now I work with economists every day, talking about what's happening in the financial market in general, but the labor market specifically. And it's cool to teach people, like I'm learning still too. I've only been there for about 14 months, but to teach people about the labor market and about economics and stuff. So
that's awesome. Well, clearly you have, again, the coolest background ever. One thing that really stands out is every single stop, there was a different story to tell. There's a different audience. There's a different message. There's a different feeling and a different narrative and a different hero for each and every one of those stories. That's something that you're clearly an expert in. So today we're going to really focus in on that. I'd love to pick your brain, how to work with testimonials, case studies. How do you tell the story of your customers and why that's important, and really diving into your background? Because clearly you've done it at a bunch of different places in a different, circumstances. So first and foremost, why do you think it's important to have case studies and testimonials and really tell the story of your customer? Why does that matter? What's the why behind doing that?
It's so interesting when you work at a brand in content, because there are so many different avenues you can go down to get to the goal, whatever that goal, whatever your KPIs are. But I feel like no matter how you construct your journey, if you are not sitting side by side with your customers and your clients for at least a portion of that journey, you've chosen the wrong path, right? They are your biggest advocates because they're with you, but also they're paying you, right? Like they love you so much, they're giving you money, right? Like, and so who best to talk about your product, your offering, your brand than those people? And I think there is often an opportunity to engage those customers in a way that is really human. Case studies have been around for probably hundreds of years, right? But they sometimes feel really, really regimented. And I've found that it's a lot easier and better and just more interesting storytelling to engage with them when you have the opportunity, like we're engaging right now. Just like talk to them about why they work with you, like why they enjoy continuing to work with you and what that means for their constituents. And so we have done that at Lightcast in the last year, in my group, just really trying to focus in on how do we engage with some of our top customers to talk about how we help them. And it's interesting to hear sometimes how differentiated the stories are, but also sometimes when you talk to a bunch of different customers, you start to hear a throughput that any of those individuals might not have come up with themselves, but you're like, oh, wow, like we talked to 17 people and like 11 of them all talked about blah, 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 blah. So that also helps to inform what your brand story should be. If you're not talking to your customers, you're sunk.
When you're talking to these customers, some people have the 5 whys or all of these different frameworks. How do you get to the real story? Because I think on the surface level, it's easy to just say, what do you like? What features do you hate? And it's really surface level. How do you get to the story? Like, how do you personally get that out of them? How do you get them in a feeling where they're like, yeah, let me tell you my story. Let me tell you how I feel.
I was fortunate enough to be an entertainment, as I mentioned in my little intro. And I think you have to have a producer's mindset. Like, and when I say producer, I mean like a television producer, like a news, journalist. And you just have to ask probing questions. I'm sure many of the listeners have known about Simon Sinek and his construct. And if you just keep asking questions to get to their real why, not the fake why that everyone delivers the first time, but the seventh why, it can be really impactful. But I think at the crux of it, what I ask of the people that I'm talking with is how their work impacts others. And that's when you can start to really get interesting stories in the mix. Think about one person or one group that your work impacted. Tell me about that. And that is proven to be one of the best questions, or a question for which I get some of the best responses.
I love that. That's awesome. I've never heard that question before, and that's golden. I love that. So you're working with these customers. How do you convince them or work with them and make it worth their time? How do you find those opportunities? You told me a story about how you got really creative to get customer stories. How do you approach, just taking the time of day and getting them to share those insights with you?
Well, I will say it is a lot easier now than it was 10 years ago. You're sitting in Utah, I'm sitting in New Jersey, we can sort of talk really easily, with in my case, a $30 microphone in front of me. But it used to be, when I started my career back in the day, it was really difficult. You had to figure out where they were and try to send a camera crew and sit down and blah, blah, blah. As part of my career, I've done event marketing. And I think if you switch your mindset as a marketer, and think about an event that you might be at or an event that you are throwing as actually just an opportunity to gather a bunch of customers and advocates in one place, put them in a room and sit down and talk to them. There's a lot of downtime at events. And so people are willing to take 15 minutes out of their day to come and talk to you about something that you collaborate on anyway, and something that they're, paying for. That has been one of the tricks that I've used in the past. Is where are we all gathering? How can we do it? And to be honest with you, I probably learned it before then, but my time at the NBA and thinking about media day, where, all of the teams have all of the people there. We should put a camera at that opportunity, or take advantage of that opportunity and do it. And so I think that that's a really great method for obtaining stories in bulk. And so, in fact, we did that. At Lightcast, we held a conference and I got over 15 of our customers to sit down with me and tell some stories. And so we've begun to publish these testimonials. And of course, the video is ideal, because you see the expression on their faces and all that, but you can get it in other ways.
I love it. So you're creative, you get them on camera, they tell their stories, you dig deep, maybe they're talking about how they impacted other people and things like that. What do you do with the content? How do you share it? What's authentic? And how do you make sure that content really adds value to the business?
The best advice that I can give to people who are in the process of creating this type of work, it seems common sense, but you just have to make the person look great, right? The person with whom you're speaking look fantastic, and make their company and their business and what they do look amazing, because there is always a part to the process of creating a testimonial or a case study or a client story wherein they must approve it, right, before you put it out into the world. So I think that that's critical. And then I've talked about this before on my LinkedIn and other places, but I believe really strongly in what's called the hero derivative model. And so you create that first touch point. Perhaps it is a video, 2-minute long video or whatever else. And that can be the bulk of what you're doing. But it shouldn't stop you from then creating multiple derivative assets from that, right? You do pull quotes in a blog. You take a small piece of the total video, make an audiogram, to put on social media. And sometimes I've even used the interaction, with the client to get them to agree to do a webinar, so that you're getting like sort of another piece of hero content on the back of your first one. But there are just so many different ways, including, by the way, to just take the transcript and do a full written case study about what they told you, and to piece it together. Like we were talking, Ben, about the fact that it's sometimes really impactful to get them to tell a story about how they affected someone else. And you were the one in, as we talked before we hit the record button, that said, like, you have to sort of treat this like journalism. And so sometimes I even go and then seek out and interview the person that they spoke about, so that you get all the sides of one story and create like this waterfall effect of, yes, maybe you're in a business to business entity, and so you don't affect that end user. But if you can get your client or your customer to talk about the end user and then talk to the end user, like, there's nothing more impactful than hearing a real human tell a real human story, instead of like this macro level business objective, KPI, USPs, like all the acronyms out in the space. But yeah, I think if you can get a compelling story out of someone, there are multiple ways, multiple media and mediums that you can use to tell it.
I love it. All right, I'm going to throw you one curveball. We're getting close to the end, so we'll see how this goes. But especially working with the MBA and working with other programs, the ability to use other people as distribution. How have you worked through that? Obviously, you're working to tell their stories, things like that. But we're in this day and age where you have LinkedIn influencers and people have massive social followings, CEOs of businesses have massive cult followings of people that believe in them and things like that. Have you found any techniques or strategies to leverage those individuals as distribution, not only the source of the material?
Yes. I think the critical part about engaging, I guess really anyone in life, is to find the thing that they are most interested in. And so I think for marketers who are listening today, who maybe have been told by their boss or their boss's boss to like, go out and hire some influencers. For me, the linchpin of it all is the core of marketing, which is know your audience. Find influencers who are really super serving the most granular articulation of your audience that you can possibly get to. You can try to go and get Kylie or Kendall Jenner, right? Like, which will get you that reach, will get you that scale, but it's a lot more important and appropriate for you to find, I think, what they're calling like a micro influencer now, who is really targeted on what you're doing. And in fact, you're sort of doing that when you're telling or eliciting a customer story or a testimonial, because that person who you're talking to has a specific industry that they're dedicated to and why they're buying your product or your service or your offering. And so if you can engage with them to tell that story to that distinct audience, then everyone wins. They get a piece of really amazing content that they didn't have to produce or pay for, that they can then distribute. You've made them look good, so they want to put it on their LinkedIn. They want to put it, on their company's website, and there you can sort of sneak your way in, because at the end of the day, there is a lot of content out there, and people are looking for ways to promote themselves, promote their company, promote their goals and their achievements. And producing content that helps them do that will inspire them to share it. And that's sort of what you're looking to do.
That's awesome. Perfect. Well, JP, as promised, this goes by quick. I mean, there's a million different directions we could have taken that conversation. I learned so much. If anyone wants to connect and reach out and further the conversation with you, how can they connect with you? What's the right place for them to find you?
LinkedIn has become the king, I think, in this day and age. And so, yeah, please find me on LinkedIn. I've got a tricky, very, very French name. Watch out for misspellings. But yeah, I'm sure when we publish this, you'll see my name somewhere, wherever you're listening or clicking on Spotify or Apple or whatever.
And we'll link to it in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Love it. Awesome. Well, JP, again, thanks for the time today. Really appreciate it.
Ben, it was great talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.